Two ambitious women, one shot outside an apartment building.
They both had overcome a lot to try to be successful.
She was very loving. Whatever you would need, she was more than happy to give it to you.
Witness accounts describe an escalating drama, but reports of what happened depend on who's telling the story.
There was a brief, some disagreement.
A group of girls had jumped one female.
She pulled what seemed to be like a small handgun and shot.
She had no criminal record. The first time her name had came up in any situation.
The aggression, the beat down, that would make anybody afraid.
I was thinking to myself, this could be what triggered everything.
She showed her the small knife and said that she would use it to protect herself.
And she claimed she had this gun for protection. You had supporters for both. I think it created a divide in the city, but she didn't deserve to die that way.
June 26, 2011. It's a quiet Sunday afternoon in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, when a series of urgent calls come into the Jefferson County 911 Center.
911.
Somebody just got shot at Sunset Village.
Ma'am?
Somebody just got shot at Sunset.
The calls were coming in saying that they had a shooter. They heard gunfire. People was running. It was a bunch of chaos. And they knew that one person had been shot.
So now please come to this apartment this Sunset. Please, this girl got shot at her chest.
Okay, it's a female that's shot in her chest.
Yes.
First responders are dispatched to a location on the west side of town.
When responding to those type calls, it's always in the back of your mind, is the shooter still there?
The first officer on the scene sees an older man administering CPR to the apparent victim. The man says he is a reverend at the church across the street.
He saw the confrontation and heard the shots. Shots really got his attention.
Looked over and he basically sees another woman with a gun and he sees a woman lying on the ground. So he goes over to render aid. When I arrived, the scene was secure. EMT was giving attention to the young lady that was down. You could see the blood coming out of the shoulder area. She was not conscious. She was not talking. They was rendering aid and getting ready to load her up into the ambulance.
As the victim is rushed to the hospital, police question bystanders to find out who she is.
We identified her through witnesses that had given her name as Vanessa Bearden.
They were able to determine that she didn't live there. So part of their initial inquiry was to determine why she was there.
The average citizen in Pine Bluff is not likely to be a victim of some random act of violence. We don't have home invasions with killings, drive-bys, and when we do, it's personal beef. It's not random.
Vanessa Bearden had no criminal record, no run-ins with the law. So you want to know who, what, why, and how. Just how all of this materialized.
Born May 15, 1990 in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, Vanessa Bearden has deep ties to the community.
Growing up, Vanessa, she had a lot of love. She was surrounded by all her cousins and all her family.
They're a big family, and they're a Pine Bluff family. They are known for their church affiliations, singing group, the Bearden Singers.
We were country kids, so we like to ride four-wheelers. We're outside picking getting the eggs from the chickens, just running around.
Everybody knew Vanessa, and she just had a really big personality.
Vanessa was very loving. Whatever you would need, if you would ask Vanessa, Vanessa was more than happy to help you with it or give it to you.
She sought justice. She wanted to make sure that everybody was treated the right way, treated fairly.
In 2008, around the time Vanessa turned 18, the Bearden family faced a major challenge.
Vanessa's father had been sick for a little bit, but when he passed away, it was still a very big shock to our family, especially to Vanessa. It was part of her support system that was no longer there, that was gone. I think it caused her to kind of reevaluate a little, take some things more seriously.
She did grow. She became more mature. Vanessa did step up with helping me as well. So she would keep my children while I worked. That was about the same time where she met the father of her children and began a relationship with him. And she had 2 kids. Vanessa's mom is a nurse. A lot of our family, they are nurses. And she liked to care for people. So Vanessa wanted to go on to become a nurse. I think it probably made her a little bit sad her dad wasn't there to see that happen. Vanessa was the best mom ever.
Their hair, shoes, everything was planned, everything was intentional because she loved those babies, and that was the way she showed her love.
As happy as 19-year-old Vanessa was to be a mother, the hardships continued when her relationship with the father of her children ended.
She did try to make that relationship work, but when she realized that it was not salvageable, that's when she kind of decided to explore other options outside of him.
Within the same year, her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Vanessa took that very hard because her mom is her idol. She was modeling her life, her adult life, after her mother's life.
Her mother's battle inspired Vanessa to complete her training to become a certified nursing assistant as she raised her nearly 2-year-old daughter and 6-month-old son.
She had just starting her job so that she could continue taking care of her family. And, you know, she had a lot of positive things working out for her right then.
But just as 21-year-old Vanessa's hard work is paying off, a tragic shooting has left her gravely wounded. And Pine Bluff police are trying to determine what happened.
They were able to piece together the approximate area in which the shooting took place, and that was based on them locating a spent 9mm cartridge.
We also retrieved the knife that was on Vanessa Bearden's person. The Reverend had taken it and given it to us. There wasn't any blood on it. I was wondering to myself, did she bring this knife to this scene with the intentions of using it? And it went bad?
As they begin to talk to people, they start getting into more specific questions.
According to some, it might have been related to a fight that took place 45 minutes earlier at a different apartment complex a few blocks away.
It was a group of college-age girls had jumped one female. And then you had a crowd of onlookers watching the fight.
They say Vanessa Bearden was one of the girls in that group and one of several people who recorded the fight.
I was thinking to myself, okay, she was involved in this fight. This could be what triggered everything. You want to know who, what, why, and how. So I want to know, did they know each other? What was the cause of the shooting? Was this a planned attack, or was she just in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Coming up, an eyewitness shares her version of the story.
She wrote her window down and told us, "You bitches come see me."
And the suspect tells her own.
She had been jumped, and she was just trying to protect herself from this group of girls.
Detectives in Pine Bluff, Arkansas are investigating the shooting of 21-year-old Vanessa Bearden. And news of the tragedy has started to spread through the community.
Another cousin called me and he asked me, did I hear anything about Vanessa being shot? And I told him no. So we all went to the hospital. We all met at the hospital. I remember sitting in the family room and the clergyman coming to pray with us. She's the baby cousin, and it's just not how it's supposed to go.
At the scene, investigators have just learned about a fight between a group of women about 45 minutes before the shooting at another complex nearby. A young woman named Colby steps forward and tells them she knows who shot Vanessa.
She identified herself and that Vanessa was a friend of hers. She said they witnessed the fight and partook in it.
Colby agrees to come to the police station and give a formal statement.
Could you tell me what happened today?
Before that incident happened, Vanessa Bearden was involved in an incident with Olivia-Moody.
Colby says Olivia isn't someone she and Vanessa knew well, but she was involved in an argument with their friend named Alicia, who lives nearby.
She said that early in the day she was hanging out with Vanessa, and they noticed another friend of theirs, Alicia Jeffries, was involved in a fight with another young lady.
There was some disagreement between Alicia and Olivia. There were witnesses who tried to break up the fight, but it had almost that gang element of multiple girls jumping on one.
I have been knowing Olivia for probably 4 months, but I haven't known her well as friends. I've always known her to stay into it with people, saying something smart just to see if someone would come bother her. And today she got to fighting one girl, and Vanessa jumped in that fight.
So Vanessa jumped in the fight against Olivia?
Yes, which doesn't make sense to me because they don't even know each other.
A young man that they called Casey, he pulled Olivia from the fight.
That fight was broken up by a black male, and the black male dropped Olivia off in Sunset.
As he's removing Olivia, she is screaming obscenities. She is screaming threats at the group.
After the incident, Colby says Alicia went home and she and Vanessa continued on with their day.
According to Colby, about 45 minutes after the fight, her and Vanessa was hanging out actually at the apartment complex where Olivia-Moody lived. They were sitting on a fence post in front of the building, and they noticed a white Tahoe riding through, and Olivia-Moody was actually in that Tahoe.
They came past us as me, Vanessa, and a group of other girls and males were standing along the ledge. And Olivia wrote her window down and told us, "You bitches come see me."
Colby says they shrugged it off, but a little while later, Olivia sent them another message directed specifically at Vanessa.
A young boy, probably 8 or 9, He came through the hallway of one of the apartment complex and said that Olivia said she wanted the girl in the red shorts. Vanessa was the only one in red shorts. I stated to Vanessa, don't go, because I knew she had a gun.
How did you know she had a gun?
I was just saying because the type of person she seems to be, she wouldn't just call you out of a fight. So Vanessa reached to her side and tapped on her side and showed me a knife and said she not playing with her.
Colby said that she showed her the small knife that she had and said that she would use it to protect herself if she needed to.
Colby says Vanessa went to find Olivia and the rest of the group followed her.
Vanessa started to go through the same apartment building hall that the boy came out of. She got within 4 or 5 feet of the apartment, and I saw Olivia reach out from behind her pants and pull what seemed to be like a small handgun. It was silver. And she pointed up her gun and shot. And when I saw that, I ran. And when I ran, I didn't know Vanessa had been hit until I heard her yell, "Colby, I'm hit." I turned around and I started running back. I saw a man, an older man, bent over, giving Vanessa CPR.
Okay. Did Vanessa have the knife out at the time she was shot?
No, sir. The knife was never drawn.
In my opinion, Colby was believable. I believe the way she painted the picture and how everything went down.
The young man that Olivia-Moody sent through that breezeway to try to make contact with those 3 young ladies was never identified. We're not able to determine who it was. Once law enforcement spoke with Colby, they had additional investigative steps. They wanted to see if they could find additional witnesses that could support the story that Colby just told them, and they want to find Olivia-Moody.
Before investigators can follow up with anyone else, they receive devastating news about Vanessa.
She was pronounced dead at the hospital.
After hearing that she had succumbed to the wounds, this changed the whole dynamic of the crime scene. So now we don't just have a first-degree battery, now we have a homicide.
News of the fatal shooting of 21-year-old Vanessa Bearden has shaken the community of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Family members gather at the hospital in mourning.
When I found out she died, it hurt me. It hurt me deeply. And I hurt for my aunt, and I hurt for my cousins, because she played an integral part in their life.
I was shocked when it happened because she's the baby cousin. I knew how much we were losing. And to us, she was not just another girl that got shot. When we went back to see her, they asked us not to touch her because it was a crime scene. And I think that had to be the hardest part for her mom and her sister.
As Vanessa's loved ones try to make sense of the loss, detectives are following up on a suspect in the shooting. 20-year-old Olivia-Moody.
We come into the knowledge that she lives in Sunset Village, so we was able to track her down there. We found no weapon at the scene, so we wasn't ruling out the fact that she may still be armed. We knock on the door and she answers.
They obtained consent from Olivia to search her apartment. During the course of that search, they were not able to locate or did not locate the firearm that Olivia used to shoot Vanessa Bearden.
We take Olivia back to the detective office, back to the station where she's Mirandized, and we talk to her further from there. Her demeanor was, I would say, calm, nonchalant. She admitted to the shooting, but she's saying that it was self-defense.
Olivia confirms what Vanessa's friend Colby told police, that she was involved in an argument earlier that day with Alicia Jeffries.
We find out this revolved around the fact that Alicia was now dating a young man that Olivia-Moody used to date. And apparently that caused some friction between Olivia-Moody and Alicia. They had come in contact as Olivia-Moody was walking down the street.
Olivia stated that Alicia and some of her friends, one of them being Vanessa Bearden, they colluded together to jump her and beat her till she was able to get out of their grasp.
We took photographs of Olivia's face, of her hands.
She did sustain some evidence of physical injury, abrasions, cuts.
Olivia says it might have been worse if her friend KC hadn't stepped in to save her.
Brian Gaddy was a friend of Olivia's. They called him KC. He was the guy that got her out of the fight. He was trying to break the fight up and get her out of harm's way.
After leaving the apartments, Olivia says she obtained a gun in case she had any more run-ins with the women.
Olivia claimed she had this gun for protection, and she was headed back to her apartment. And on the way there, she see a group of girls sitting on the fence post by her apartment.
Although Alicia had already left the apartment complex, that group did include Vanessa and Colby. Near them was a group of young men, and Olivia says one of them approached her, a man known as G-Rel.
G-Rel had some prior minimal association with Olivia-Moody. In other words, they knew each other, but they weren't friends.
Olivia says G-Rel asked her about the fight, and as they talked, she decided it might be worth trying to de-escalate the tension through some of her friends.
She decided, according to her, to go talk to Vanessa and Colby to see if she could, I believe the phrase she used was squash the situation.
Olivia admits she brought a gun with her just in case.
Olivia says she had been jumped, she's been harassed, and she's been bullied. She was just trying to protect herself from this group of girls.
As Vanessa and Colby got closer, Olivia claims she heard Colby say, "Get her."
So she pulls out the gun, according to Olivia, to scare him.
She admits that she shot the gun in the direction of Vanessa Bearden. But Olivia claimed that she was trying to shoot a warning shot.
When she realized she'd actually shot Vanessa, she was in shock.
She just stood there near the body, and someone took the gun from her. She didn't notice who took it. Then she went to her apartment, closed the door, and waited for the authorities.
After hearing Olivia's version, I didn't buy the warning shot based on witnesses' statement that it was pointed at Vanessa.
After her interview, the decision is made to arrest Olivia.
Miss Moody was initially charged with capital murder, As I was filling out the paperwork and the ticket to let Miss Moody know she was being charged with capital murder, she made the statement, no, actually it was second-degree murder. It caught me by surprise because I had never heard anyone make a statement like that.
While Olivia's comment reveals unexpected knowledge of the legal system, it has no effect on the outcome.
When there is a criminal charge, an arrest charge is called, that's made by the police. But the police aren't authorized to file an official criminal charge, an indictment. And in court, she was charged with murder 1.
At this point, you want to find more witnesses to either debunk or solidify her statement. We was trying to collaborate the story that Olivia told us about G-Rail being at the scene, but we was unable to locate him. I was beginning to wonder if there was a G-Rail.
Coming up, investigators question their assumptions about Olivia.
She does not fit the profile of a cold-blooded killer.
And the residents of Pine Bluff begin to take sides.
The community stood behind Olivia, believed in her.
It kind of felt like being victimized all over again.
Just a few hours after the death of Vanessa Bearden, the young woman who shot her, Olivia-Moody, is in police custody. Investigators suspect her claim of self-defense is a smokescreen for her true motive.
I think to a large degree that Olivia-Moody had been embarrassed and she had been punked down and that she was going to take action to make sure that everybody in that area knew she was not to be messed with.
Kobe had told us that the fight earlier during the day was between Alicia Jeffries and Olivia-Moody. So now we need to talk to Alicia to find out what the fight was about.
When detectives speak with Alicia, she confirms she and Olivia are at odds over a guy, but she does not agree to a formal interview. To learn more about their issues, detectives dig into their social media.
They did not like each other. They had a pretty significant Facebook war in which they both said very terrible things about the other person. And that all surrounded by what was then Olivia-Moody's ex-boyfriend and Alicia's current boyfriend.
Alicia started taunting and harassing Olivia, and tensions became high and it escalated into the fight.
A background check on Olivia-Moody underscores the tragedy of the shooting.
Olivia-Moody, she was born in Chicago, Illinois, came up poor. Her mother was addicted to drugs.
Olivia's mother let her family members raise her children as she worked on her recovery.
Olivia's mother is my sister, and in the beginning, me and my mom, we were taking care of my sister's 5 kids, and Olivia was one of them. And eventually, my mom lost her eyesight, so I ended up getting all the kids through DCSF, and my mom, and it wasn't easy, but we made it. We made it.
Despite the hardships of her early childhood, Olivia managed to rise above her circumstances.
Olivia was very bright. She was an honor roll student in elementary school. She was always studious, and she was very giving. She was basically just a good kid. She didn't get in trouble. She went to school every day. She made good grades.
She ended up coming to Pine Bluff, attending University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, and majoring in criminal justice.
She would have been the first person in my immediate family that would have graduated with a college degree. So yeah, we was all proud of Olivia.
At the time, she was actually a clerk for a local circuit judge. Knowing Olivia's background, she does not fit the profile of a cold-blooded killer.
Detectives consider the possibility that Olivia has been telling them the truth about being harassed. But they need to determine why Vanessa was the one who ended up dead. Searching for clarity, they revisit the witness statements and discover a pivotal piece of evidence.
Vanessa and Olivia didn't have any type of relationship. They didn't even know each other prior to that day.
Vanessa did, however, video that altercation with her cell phone.
The video of the fight, it shows all the people that was around watching it, and it shows Olivia getting jumped on. She's pretty much helpless, and it's hard to fight against that many attackers. I believe that Vanessa was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Vanessa wasn't the one that Olivia was into it with. She just happened to be there. But I think seeing those girls that had jumped on her, I think it triggered something in Olivia. But I feel like there was other avenues that Olivia could have taken before taking matters into her own hand.
Although Olivia-Moody has been charged with the first-degree murder of Vanessa Bearden, investigators now question whether the evidence supports her claim of self-defense. They hope the results of an autopsy will provide some definitive answers.
Vanessa's autopsy revealed that she was struck in her back left shoulder, and it actually exited through the front out of her right shoulder.
She was shot in the back.
It was not a close-range gunfire, somewhere between 6 to 10 feet maybe. I'm thinking, it's not self-defense if you hit in the back and you also flee. See, if Vanessa had pulled the knife on her or tried to cut her or stab her, then you would have had an argument for self-defense.
It's important to note that there's no evidence that Vanessa Bearden ever brandished the knife, much less threatened Olivia-Moody with the knife.
As the story of Vanessa's murder and Olivia's arrest spreads through the community, not everyone agrees about Olivia's guilt.
I think it created a divide in the city because you had supporters for both, and you had a lot of anti-bullying sentiments that was brought about for Olivia, and you had people that felt like Vanessa didn't deserve to die that way.
Olivia got to be the person that they looked at and said, oh, well, just because she went to college, it couldn't have been Olivia that did it. Vanessa had to have done something in order for Olivia to react like that. And it kind of felt like being victimized all over again.
Olivia returns to college while investigators continue to build their case against her. Then, 3 months after Vanessa Bearden's death, a new witness emerges.
An individual by the name of Gerald Allen, or Gerald Allen. He goes by the street name G-Rail.
Olivia claimed this man witnessed the shooting firsthand, but police had never been able to find him.
G-Rail, the one we was looking for, he surfaced. He's locked up in jail on drug charges.
While he's incarcerated awaiting trial, he writes a letter to the prosecutor's office indicating that he has information. That letter's turned over to the Palma Police Department investigators, and they go interview Gorell Allen. G-Rail was a material witness for the government. This case was heavily dependent on eyewitness testimony as to what happened.
G-Rail says that he sees Olivia shortly after the fight.
Olivia entices G-Rail to try to talk to those three girls and get them to come have some type of interaction with her.
Later on, G-Rail says he sees Olivia fires a shot from about 6 to 10 feet away, striking Vanessa. He also mentioned that Vanessa never made any type of threatening moves towards Olivia.
G-Rail did confirm that Olivia-Moody shot Vanessa Bearden in the back, not only in the back, but as Vanessa Bearden was running away from Olivia-Moody.
However, he seems just as conflicted about the shooting as the community at large.
G-Rail still believes that despite all that information, despite how everything played out, that Olivia still acted in self-defense.
He maintained that, but he was incorrect.
For prosecutors, the statement makes one thing abundantly clear.
I have never believed that Olivia-Moody was an inherently bad person. I believe Olivia-Moody did an inherently bad thing.
I honestly believe she got the gun for protection, but I think just seeing them at her place where she resided triggered something in her. I think she tried to bait them into that situation. I don't believe she fired a warning shot. I think she just pointed and fired.
But they know the outcome of any trial, especially one this controversial, is uncertain.
Going into trial, I had my concerns about the public opinions because you don't know how that would affect the jury.
Nearly 1 year after Vanessa Bearden's death, the young woman who shot her, Olivia-Moody, goes on trial for murder.
The trial began May 16, 2012, and the courtroom is packed. There's a lot of supporters there for Olivia. There's some supporters there for Vanessa.
Our defense was self-defense. We tried to use the aggression, the beat down, that would make anybody afraid. She was protecting herself against further beat down.
General argument by the prosecution is that it can't be self-defense if the victim is fleeing and is no longer a threat to you.
You have to prove state of mind in order to say you fearfully of your life. And the only way we could establish that was to put her on the stand. But anytime you put a criminal defendant on the stand, it is just high risk.
Before Olivia takes the stand, prosecutors attempt to negotiate a plea deal, reducing the charges from first-degree murder to manslaughter. But Olivia refuses the deal.
She would have gotten 4 years probation, reduced to manslaughter, with the right of expungement of record. Had that happened, she would have been placed in a car that day with her family going back to Chicago.
Olivia-Moody took the stand. She was faced with tough questions that she did not have an answer for. Why she got a gun, why she went to them, And then the defense was done presenting their evidence, and we gave closing statements. But the jury deliberated and came back with a verdict of guilty on one count of second-degree murder. I believe it was very clear to the jury that this was not a case of self-defense. Not at all. This was an extreme manifestation in indifference to the value of human life, which is what second-degree murder is.
The verdict was very hard. It was very hard. Olivia was very strong. She didn't cry, you know. She was trying to comfort us, matter of fact.
The guilty verdict felt like not what we believed she deserved, but there was some kind of justice.
She received 30 years and was eligible for parole and 7.5 years with good behavior. I felt like justice was served, but in the end, you had 2 families destroyed. Vanessa and Olivia, they both come from rough backgrounds. They both had overcome a lot to try to be successful. They both had bright futures ahead of them, and this situation just changed the trajectory of their both futures.
We talk about Vanessa pretty often, remembering the good things, laughing about the things that were funny, and telling the stories, making sure that her children are brought up in an environment of love.
Vanessa was a person that never got to live up to her potential. A lot of times when I have seen interviews or even while I was in court, she was always referred to as that girl. But she's Vanessa to us. She's a mom. She's a sister. She's a daughter. She belongs to somebody. She's still here with us. She's still a person. We still believe that Vanessa should have been able to live her life peacefully.
Year-old son named Joby, and a hard worker who ran a side business treating floors. He even taught children how to handle firearms safely. He was the kind of guy who made the world a little better just by being in it. My, you have a decent, honorable man, and then you have his wife, Karen. To the outside world, they were a happy blue-collar family who loved the outdoors. But behind closed doors, Karen was living a completely different life. She was swimming in methamphetamine and carrying on multiple extramarital affairs, even sleeping with the husband of her best friend. Danny despised her drug use. If he had known the full extent of her betrayals, he would have left her. But Karen did not want a divorce. She wanted a $50,000 life insurance payout and a clean slate, and she was willing to orchestrate a cold-blooded execution to get it. She began visiting a convicted armed robber named Larry Nolan in the Missouri State Penitentiary. Larry fancied himself in love with her. You have to be kidding me. A convict falling for a manipulative addict who played him like a cheap fiddle. She promised to marry him and pay him $15,000 if he arranged the murder of her husband. Larry reached out to a corrupt firefighter named James Cornhart, who recruited a man named Stephen Mueller and an unknown thug called Dozer for a miserable few $1,000s. These cowards lured a good man to a vacant house under the guise of discussing the infidelity of his wife. They beat him without mercy, and Stephen Mueller shot him dead. They drove his body out to that field and set it ablaze. They stripped the license plates, thinking they were criminal masterminds. But they left a matchbook with a cellophane wrapper at the scene. And on that wrapper was a single fingerprint. For years, the case went cold. Karen collected her blood money and immediately cut off all contact with Larry. She left him rotting in a cell. Hell hath no fury like a criminal scorned. Before dying of hepatitis in prison. And enraged, Larry confessed the entire pathetic plot to his cellmate, completely destroying the grand illusion Karen had built. By 1999, the Federal Bureau of Investigation heard the whispers and knocked on our door. We dusted off that cellophane wrapper, and the fingerprint matched James Cornhart perfectly. When the walls closed in, the rats turned on each other. Stephen Mueller confessed everything to save his own skin. Karen, realized that her web of lies had finally unraveled, pled guilty and turned state evidence, suddenly blaming her murderous heart on drugs. She claimed she was sober now and had a new perspective. I tell you, a sober snake is still a snake. Cornhart and Mueller were sentenced to life in prison. Karen received a 20-year sentence for her cooperation, 20 years for ordering the slaughter of the father of her child. It sickens me, but that is the justice system. We are still hunting for the ghost named Dozer, but we are patient men. Danny Coleman was an asset to this world, blindsided by the one person he was supposed to trust most. The fire that night in Stanton was meant to erase him, but all it did was light a beacon that guided us straight to the monsters hiding in the dark. Human beings are peculiar creatures. They kill each other for the most ridiculous reasons you can possibly imagine. You would think that after 19 years of marriage, a vow means something. You would think that building a life, raising a child, and sharing a home creates a bond that cannot be broken. But you would be wrong. Some people do not have a heart. They have a cash register where their heart should be. And when the math does not work in their favor anymore, they simply eliminate the equation. My. I tell you, in my years of looking at the darkest corners of the human soul, the betrayal of Danny. Coleman is a textbook example of how greed and lust can turn an ordinary person into a monster. Let us set the scene. October 22nd, 1992, Stanton, Missouri. A motorist sees a fire blazing out in the middle of nowhere, a rural county. Just woods and empty fields. The fire department arrives, and they do not just find a burning truck. They find a tomb. Inside the passenger seat is a body burned almost beyond recognition. The fire destroyed almost everything. The license plates were gone. The perpetrators thought they were clever. They thought fire cleanses all sins. You have to be kidding me. Fire does not destroy the truth. It just makes us look harder. Investigators found the vehicle identification number etched right into the metal frame. Criminals always forget the details. That number led to an address in St. Louis, a 45-minute drive away, to a man named Danny. Coleman. Danny was 38 years old, an Army veteran, a mechanical engineer, a father, a man who taught children how to handle hunting rifles safely. By all accounts, Danny was a good man. A straight arrow who loved his family, worked hard, and even started a side business treating ceramic floors so people would not slip and fall. He spent his life trying to make things safer for others. He had no idea the real danger was sleeping right next to him. When police went to the house at 2:30 in the morning, they met his wife, Karen Coleman, and their 18-year-old son, Joby. Karen played the part of the worried wife. She identified the charred jewelry, the hunting belt buckled the watch. She even confirmed that Danny had a metal rod in his right leg from a motorcycle accident years ago. In Germany, the medical examiner, Dr. Mary Case, confirmed it was Danny, but Dr. Case found something else. Tremendous blunt force trauma to the skull, and later alleged snowstorm in the bone fragments. Danny was not just burned, he was beaten and shot. This was not an accident. This was a calculated execution. Why would anyone want Danny dead? We started looking at his inner circle. You always look closest to home. We found out Danny received a cryptic phone call at work the day before he was found. Phone records showed Karen made late-night calls to Danny's friend Rich Saluka at 1:30 and 3:30 in the morning on the night of the murder. Rich was cleared. He had a solid alibi, and he was genuinely devastated. But Rich told us something interesting. He said Karen was a rougher person than Danny. He hinted at marital problems. And as investigators dug deeper, the illusion of the happy Coleman marriage shattered completely. Karen Coleman was living a double life. While Danny was working honestly to provide for his family, Karen was sinking into the dark world of methamphetamines. She was using, she was dealing, and she was sleeping around. Danny despised drugs. He was an honest, clean-living man, a fixer by trade. He likely saw the cracks in his marriage and thought he could repair them just like he fixed machinery. He was blind to her malicious intent because he himself possessed none. But Karen did not want to be fixed. She wanted a payday. She wanted the $50,000 life insurance policy. She saw her husband not as a partner, but as an obstacle to her twisted freedom and a paycheck to fund her decay. The case went cold for years. Criminals think that means they got away with it. But guilt is a heavy burden, and secrets have a way of whispering in the dark. In 1999, the whispers turned into a shout from behind the walls of Missouri State Penitentiary. An inmate came forward with a deathbed confession from his former cellmate, an armed robber named Larry Nolan. Larry had died of hepatitis, but before he went straight to his grave, he spilled his guts. Karen was best friends with Larry's wife. She started visiting Larry in prison. She seduced him. She manipulated him. She used his desperation for human connection against him. She promised him $15,000 and her hand in marriage if he arranged to have Danny killed. Larry thought he was in love. He thought he was going to be a rich married man when he got out. I tell you, there is no fool quite like a fool in love with a black widow. Larry reached out to a friend on the outside, a local firefighter named James Cornhart. James agreed to facilitate the murder for $17,000. James then recruited another man, Stephen Mueller, for a miserable $1,200, and a mystery man known only as Dozer. Think about that. They took a good man's life for the price of a used car and some pocket change. It is absolutely sickening. On the night of the murder, they lured Danny to a vacant house under the pretense of having information about Karen's infidelity. Danny went because he loved his wife and wanted the truth to save his home. Instead, he walked into a slaughterhouse. They beat him. Stephen Mueller admitted he shot Danny 3 times. They drove his body out to a field in his own truck and set it on fire. But remember what I said about criminals making mistakes. At the crime scene in 1992, investigators found a matchbook with cellophane wrapper. They pulled a single latent fingerprint off that wrapper and locked it in an evidence vault. 16 years later, when federal authorities finally gathered enough evidence to arrest James Cornhart, they rolled his fingers in ink. The print was a perfect match. 16 years of waiting, and the ghost of Danny Coleman finally reached out and grabbed James Cornhart by the throat. James was sitting in jail, panic setting in. He made a phone call to Stephen Mueller asking him to throw a homemade silencer built from a lawnmower muffler off a bridge. We listened to the tapes. We brought Stephen in, and he sang like a bird. He wanted the weight off his shoulders. The dominoes were falling, and Karen Coleman realized she was standing right in the path of destruction. Faced with federal charges, in 2010 Karen folded. She confessed to everything. She blamed it on the drugs, of course. Criminals always look for a scapegoat. She claimed she had a new perspective now that she was sober. But sobriety does not cure a rotten soul. She got 20 years in federal prison. James and Stephen got life sentences. Those are still out there, but let me tell you something about secrets. They do not stay buried forever. Danny Coleman was an asset to this world. He was a great guy who was completely blindsided by his loyalty and his love for a woman who viewed him as nothing more than a bank machine. He deserved better. He deserved a long life watching his son grow up. His killers thought they were clever, but in the end, they were just greedy, sloppy, and stupid. Justice took its sweet time, but it arrived. It always does. Humans are peculiar creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, but beneath the complexity of their lies, it usually boils down to the oldest sins in the book: greed, lust, pride. I tell you, you spend enough time looking into the eyes of murderers, you realize the devil does not wear horns. Sometimes the devil is sitting right across from you at the dinner table. It was the night of October 22nd, 1992, just after 9 o'clock. A motorist driving down Interstate 44 through the rural darkness of Stanton, Missouri, spotted a fire burning out in an isolated field. The Franklin County Fire Department responded to what they thought was a routine vehicle fire. But when they extinguished the flames, they found a body in the passenger seat. The fire was so intense, the vehicle was reduced to a blackened skeleton. But fires, you see, are funny things. Criminals think fire cleanses all sins. They believe it erases their mistakes. They are wrong. The victim was burned beyond recognition. No guoli, no identificación. Whoever did this removed the license plates to delay us. That is a conscious effort to obstruct justice. But they forgot one tiny detail. They always forget something. The vehicle identification number was still etched into the frame of the truck. That number led investigators to an address 45 minutes away in St. Louis, to a man named Danny Coleman. Danny was 38 years old. By all accounts, a genuinely good man. He served his country in the Army back in 1971, stationed in Germany until a severe motorcycle accident shattered his right leg. They put a metal rod in that leg to put him back together. After his discharge, he built a life. He married his wife, Karen, in 1973. They had a son named Joby in 1974. Danny worked hard as a mechanical engineer and even started a successful side business treating, flooring to make it non-slip. He did not drink. He did not smoke. He spent his free time teaching children gun safety. He was the kind of man who carried the weight of his family on his shoulders without complaint. When investigators knocked on the Coleman door at 2:30 in the morning, they found Karen and 18-year-old Joby. They presented the personal effects recovered from the ashes: a gold chain, a ring, a watch, a belt buckle from a hunting organization. The family identified them through tears. The metal rod in the victim's leg confirmed the tragedy. Danny was dead. The investigation stalls. When a good man dies a violent death, you have to look at the people closest to him. The autopsy by Dr. Mary Case revealed the horrifying truth. This was no accident. The skull was crushed by severe blunt force trauma. He was beaten to death before the fire was set. We found a matchbox and a cellophane wrapper near the scene. Someone dropped in the dark. We pulled a latent fingerprint off that cellophane. We ran it, but we got no match. The ghost remained invisible. We looked at Danny's friend, Rich Saluka. There were cryptic phone calls to Rich from the Coleman house at 1:30 and 3:30 in the morning on the night of the murder. Rich was shocked. He cooperated fully. His alibi was ironclad. But Rich gave us a window into the reality of Danny's life. He told us Danny and Karen were having marital issues. We dug into Karen Coleman. My, the grieving widow was not who she pretended to be. She was living a double life. We discovered she was deeply involved in using and dealing methamphetamine. She was having multiple extramarital affairs, including one with her best friend's husband. Danny hated the drugs. He was a straight-laced man trapped in a marriage with a woman spiraling into darkness. But despite these revelations, we could not connect Karen directly to the murder scene. The trail went cold. Days turned into months, and months turned into years. The deathbed confession. Time is the enemy of a detective, but it is also the enemy of a secret. People talk. They always talk. Fast forward to 1999, 7 years later. The Federal Bureau of Investigation in St. Louis received a call from Missouri State Penitentiary. An inmate had a story to tell about a former cellmate named Larry Nolan, a convicted armed robber who died of hepatitis in 1996. Before Larry took his last breath, he made a deathbed confession. He said he helped orchestrate a murder. The victim? Danny Coleman. And who put him up to it? Karen Coleman. You have to be kidding me. Karen and Larry's wife were friends. Karen started visiting Larry in prison by herself in December of 1989. She manipulated him. She used her body and his pathetic infatuation to spin a web. She promised Larry $15,000 from Danny's $50,000 life insurance policy, and she promised to marry him. All he had to do was arrange to have her husband eliminated. Larry reached out to a friend on the outside, a stand-in firefighter named James Cornhart. Cornhart agreed to do the dirty work. Larry even arranged to have a silencer manufactured from a lawnmower muffler for Cornhart's pistol. Karen gave him Danny's schedule, but after the deed was done, Karen cut Larry off. She never paid him the money. She stopped visiting. Larry died angry and betrayed, pouring his heart out to his cellmate. There is no honor among thieves, and there is certainly no loyalty among murderers. The net closes. We checked the prison visitor logs. Karen Coleman and James Cornhart were both on Larry Nolan's list. We had the medical examiner look at Danny's x-rays again. She found a lead snowstorm, fragments of bullets embedded in the skull, proving Danny had been shot, just as the inmate claimed. It took until 2008 to build a case strong enough for the federal prosecutors. On December 12, 2008, authorities arrested 49-year-old James Cornhart at his firehouse. They fingerprinted him. 16 years after a man was beaten and burned in a field, the science caught up. Cornhart's print matched the latent fingerprint left on the matchbox cellophane at the crime scene. Cornhart made a fatal mistake in jail. He made recorded phone calls to a friend named Stephen Mueller, asking him to throw away a gun, some ammunition, and a lawnmower muffler hidden at his house. Investigators squeezed Mueller. Mueller broke. Mueller confessed that he, Cornhart, and a third unidentified man, known only as Dozer, lured Danny to a vacant house under the pretense of discussing Karen's infidelity. When Danny arrived, they ambushed him. They beat him relentlessly, and Mueller admitted he fired the 3 fatal shots. They drove Danny to the field in his own truck and set on fire. Why? For a fraction of $50,000. Cornhart was promised $17,000. Mueller was promised $1,200. They extinguished a good man's life for pocket change. The cost agreed. When we arrested Karen Coleman at 54 years old, she finally faced music, facing conspiracy to commit murder for higher charge. The grand manipulator tried to save herself one last time. She flipped on the others for a lighter sentence. She admitted she wanted out of the marriage and wanted the insurance money to start a new life, and who had organized and funded the hit. Prosecutors made a difficult decision. They offered Chow Tran full immunity in exchange for his detailed testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. On August 26, 219, Daphne Wright's trial began. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a greedy, manipulative monster who exerted total psychological control over him, forcing him to comply with her demands. The defense fiercely attacked Chow's credibility, arguing that there was no physical documentation of the $280,000 debt, and that Chow had simply acted out of pure personal greed to pocket the $850,000 insurance payout. In September 219, the jury delivered their verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory were also handed lengthy prison sentences for their roles in the conspiracy, though justice was served to those who carried out and planned the physical act. A bittersweet shadow hung over the police department. Because of the immunity agreement, Chow Tran walked free, leaving Detective Stewart with a profound sense of unfinished business. Yet, as a veteran detective closed the case file, he held on to the enduring belief that true justice operates on a higher plane, and that what is done in the dark will always eventually find its way to the light. Chapter 1. The Morning of 7/29. The summer air in Arlington, Texas, during the month of June has a way of pressing down on the earth early in the day. thick with the promise of relentless heat. On the morning of June 10, 2012, at precisely 7:29, the quiet hum of the emergency dispatch center was interrupted by a phone call. The voice on the other end belonged to 38-year-old Chow Tran, a Vietnamese immigrant whose words carried a heavy anchor of worry. He was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. The operator, accustomed to the varied cadences of a diverse city, listened carefully as Chow struggled to spell out the names over the crackle of the line. "My dad's name is Long," Chow explained, his voice trembling slightly. "Last name Nguyen. He is 70-something right now." Chow explained that his family had gathered outside the apartment. His teenage son had been sent to knock on the door, but the knocks returned only an empty, hollow silence. Through the window, they could see that things inside the home were not as they should be. The window was slightly ajar, and things seemed to have fallen down. Terrified of what they might find, the family chose to wait outside, praying for a simple misunderstanding. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience under his belt, was the first to arrive at the scene. He was a man who believed in the quiet resilience of his community, always ready to offer a reassuring word or a helping hand. When he pulled up to the apartment complex, the sight of an entire family standing under the early morning sun instantly signaled that this was no ordinary welfare check. It was far too early in the day for such a gathering, and the tension in the air was palpable. Entering the residence, Officer Weller kept his flashlight ready. He called out into the quiet apartment, but his voice only bounced off the walls. The living room was in complete disarray, displaying all the classic signs of a burglary. Drawers were pulled open, items were scattered, and yet there was a strange, unsettling stillness to the air. He walked through the kitchen and checked the bathroom. Nothing. The only place left to look was the main bedroom. At first glance, the bedroom appeared empty. Officer Weller, focused purely on the safety of the family, began to turn around to leave, feeling a brief wave of relief that perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk to enjoy the cooler air. But as he swung his flashlight toward the exit, the beam caught something on the wall next to a remarkably small closet. There were smudges, handprints. A sudden, instinctual hesitation seized him. Every seasoned instinct told him that what lay behind that small closet door would change. Everything. Taking a deep breath, he pulled the door open. Inside the cramped space lay the elderly couple, bound tightly with duct tape. There was no breath left in them. In that split second, the gravity of the scene washed over Officer Weller. In his 14 years of public service, he had never witnessed anything so heart-wrenching. He stepped back into the living room, his mind struggling to process the scene, before gathering his composure to call for backup, requesting a supervisor and the crime scene unit. Chapter 2, The Veteran Perspective. Within the hour, the apartment was filled with the quiet, methodical movement of investigators. Among them was Detective Stewart, a veteran of the Homicide Division with 21 years of experience. He was a man who had seen the worst of humanity, yet he still maintained a deep-seated belief in justice and the ultimate triumph of good over evil. As Detective Stewart examined the scene, he noted the sheer violence of the struggle. It was clear that the victims had fought bravely. There were marks on the walls where they had tried to hold on as they were forced toward the back of the apartment. The living room had been thoroughly ransacked, with compact discs scattered across the floor, giving the initial impression of a robbery gone wrong. However, Detective Stewart's experienced eyes caught several anomalies. Resting on the coffee table was a plate with crushed prescription pills, as if prepared for consumption, along with a single marijuana cigarette. Most peculiar of all was a light blue bandana wrapped neatly around a beer bottle, left in plain sight. ++. Scene evidence log. +++. Item location description. +++. Coffee table crushed prescription pills on a plate. Coffee table 1, partially smoked marijuana cigarette. Living room floor ransacked compact discs and furniture. Near entrance beer bottle wrapped in a blue bandana. Bedroom closet extreme volume of heavy-duty duct tape. Plus. In Arlington, certain local groups were known to use specific colors, and the light blue bandana resembled a calling card. Yet, the placement seemed almost too deliberate, as if the perpetrators were eager to claim responsibility or, perhaps, to point the finger elsewhere. Sometimes things seem too perfect. Detective Stewart mused to his partner. A robbery is usually quick and messy. This feels different. It feels staged. The loss of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee sent shockwaves through the local community. The couple had immigrated from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them a deep love for their heritage, their 3 children, and their grandchildren. They had established a commercial sewing business in Arlington, hoping to build a lasting legacy. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off, even securing a lucrative contract to produce garments for major commercial giants, including Disney. The neighborhood remembered them as exceptionally sweet, generous people who never harbored any ill will toward anyone. They were the very definition of the American dream, living quietly and working tirelessly to support their family. But by 2011, the winds of fortune had shifted. The major contract was lost, and the family business began to face severe financial strain. Chapter 3. The Seeking of Solace. In times of great hardship, people often look to their deepest beliefs for a way forward. For Long and Hong, who carried the ancient traditions of their homeland close to their hearts. The string of bad luck felt like a spiritual obstacle. In many traditional cultures, when a family faces sudden bankruptcy or legal troubles, they seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to perform rituals, clear negative energy, and invite blessings of prosperity back into their lives. Chow Tran, who spoke the best English and managed many of the business's external affairs, began searching for a solution. In a local Vietnamese newspaper, they discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, operating out of Houston, approximately 250 miles away. The advertisement claimed she possessed a rare ability to lift heavy curses and restore good, fortune to those in dire need. With hope in their hearts, Chow and his mother-in-law, Hong, reached out to Daphne. Chow made the long drive to Houston for an initial consultation, where Daphne performed a traditional ritual. The family returned to Arlington filled with renewed optimism, fully believing that their fortunes would soon turn around and their business would flourish once more. But as the months rolled on into 2012, the expected prosperity did not arrive. Instead, a quiet desperation began to settle over the household. The family continued to pour their remaining funds into Daphne's services, hoping that just one more ritual, one more blessing, would finally break the curse. Unbeknownst to many, the spiritual debt was mounting rapidly, ballooning to a sum between $250,000 and $280,000. Chapter 4. The Silent Investigation. Following the discovery, on June 10th, investigators attended the autopsy at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office. The findings were deeply unsettling. While there were signs of blunt force trauma to the victims' heads, the medical examiner revealed that the true cause of death was suffocation. The perpetrators had wrapped Hong's face in 25 feet of duct tape and Long's face in 10 feet of duct tape. The sheer deliberateness of the act pointed away from a simple gang robbery. This was personal, methodical, and incredibly cold. As the detectives brainstormed potential leads, Detective Stewart received a routine call from an insurance company. It revealed that the deceased couple carried a substantial life insurance policy worth at least $1 million, specifically $850,000, and one of the primary beneficiaries was none other than Chow Tran. On June 13, 2012, Detectives invited Chow to the station to discuss the family business and the insurance policy. Chow explained calmly that because the commercial sewing business was registered under his in-laws' names, the policy was a standard safeguard to ensure the business could continue to support the family if either parent passed away. When questioned about his whereabouts on the night of June 9th, Chow provided a detailed and consistent alibi. The entire family had been at a birthday celebration for his father-in-law. They had eaten together, played cards until past 10 o'clock, and then returned home. Other family members confirmed the timeline, leaving detectives without any immediate reason to suspect Chow. The police collected DNA and fingerprint samples from Chow, the family members, and various associates, comparing them to the evidence gathered from the apartment. Special attention was paid to the marijuana cigarette found on the coffee table. However, when the results returned from the database, there was no match. The DNA profile did not exist in the national database. For over 2 years, the case remained quietly on the shelf, a cold case that weighed heavily on Detective Stewart's mind. He refused to let the memory of the sweet elderly couple fade into obscurity. He knew that sooner or later, a single thread would unravel the entire mystery. Chapter 5. The Thread Unravels. In October 2015, the breakthrough arrived from the most unexpected of places. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for a felony involving the theft of a horse. Because a felony conviction requires the submission of a DNA profile to the national database, Willie's genetic signature was officially entered into the system. Within days, the system flagged a perfect match. The DNA from the partially smoked marijuana cigarette left on the coffee table in Arlington Back In 2012 belonged to Willie Guillory. At the time of the murders, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not been in the system during the initial investigation. On October 17, 2015, detectives brought Willie in for questioning under the guise of a parole violation. When presented with the undeniable scientific evidence, placing him inside the apartment on the night of the crime, the young man broke down in tears and confessed. "I was there," Willie sobbed, "but I didn't do it alone. My uncle, Bobby Guillory, told me to come help him with a job up in Arlington." Willie described how his uncle had obtained a key to the apartment, allowing him to enter without forcing the door. The plan, Bobby had explained, was to stage a burglary to make it look like local gang members were responsible. They brought along a blue bandana, crush pills, and beer bottles to scatter around the room. Willie had smoked a portion of a marijuana cigarette, accidentally leaving behind the very key that would eventually unlock the truth. ++, murder for hire chain. ++, Chow Tran / Hong. Lee owed $250,000 plus to Daphne Wright. Daphne Wright orchestrated plot and provided key. Bobby Guillory recruited nephew for $10,000. Willie Guillory left DNA on scene, age 16. ++, when the elderly couple returned home, the situation quickly turned violent. Bobby had subdued Long, while Willie attempted to prevent Hong from screaming. After incapacitating them, they bound them with duct tape, moved them into the small bedroom closet, and fled back to Houston. When asked why they would target a harmless elderly couple, Willie revealed the mastermind behind the entire plot, a woman named Daphne Wright, whom his uncle had met through mutual connections. According to Willie, Daphne had claimed that people owed her a significant amount of money, and she wanted them to pay up. She had allegedly told Bobby, "If they don't pay up, I want them dead." Chapter 6. The Final Pieces. Armed with this critical information, detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, on December 16, 2015, to arrest 52-year-old Bobby Guillory. Faced with the reality of the charges and confession of his nephew, Bobby also chose to cooperate. He admitted his role, explaining that he had been laid off work, desperate, and struggling to survive when Daphne offered him $10,000 to carry out the deed. Bobby claimed that Daphne was a spiritual loan shark who wielded immense influence over Chow Tran and Hong Lee. When the debt grew too large to pay, Daphne learned of substantial life insurance policies. According to Bobby, Daphne decided that the only way to recover her funds was to have the couple eliminated so that the family could collect the insurance money and pay her back. Crucially, Bobby claimed that Daphne had obtained the key to the apartment directly from Chow Tran himself. In August of 2016, detectives executed an arrest warrant at Daphne Wright's home in Houston. A thorough search of her residence revealed a detailed business ledger. The ledger documented her spiritual services, showing that she charged clients $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and even $40,000 for various rituals and curse removals. To secure a conviction against Daphne, whom they believed to be the ultimate instigator of the tragedy, prosecutors offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full and honest testimony. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow took the stand. He portrayed Daphne as a powerful, manipulative figure who had completely dominated his mind and actions, leaving him terrified of what she might do if the family failed to pay. Chow claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong, had actually suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money and clear the debt, a claim that investigators found highly implausible. Nevertheless, Chow's testimony provided the jury with a clear picture of the greed and manipulation that drove the conspiracy. On September 2019, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while Detective Stewart remained frustrated that Chow Tran walked away free due to the immunity agreement. He took solace in the knowledge that the truth had been brought to light. The memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee was finally honored with justice, proving that even the darkest secrets eventually find their way into the warmth of the sun, leaving the community stronger, wiser, and united in the pursuit of peace. The threads of fortune. The morning sun over Arlington, Texas, always seemed to bring a promise of fresh beginnings, casting a warm, golden glow over the quiet suburban streets. In this corner of Tarrant County, the air was often filled with the sweet scent of blooming jasmine and the distant, comforting hum of neighborhood life. For decades, this city had been a sanctuary of hope, a place where families from all corners of the world came to weave their own unique threads into the grand tapestry of the American dream. Among them was a vibrant and close-knit Vietnamese community, whose members had spent years building businesses, raising children, and preserving the rich heritage of their homeland. At the heart of this community were Long Nguyen and Hong Le, an endearing elderly couple who had immigrated to the United States in the year 2000. They were the very definition of gentle souls, known throughout their neighborhood for their warm smiles, their generous hearts, and their unwavering devotion to their family. When they first arrived in Texas, they did not see challenges. They only saw opportunities. With 3 children to support and a vision of a bright future, they established a commercial sewing business. It was a modest endeavor at first, operating out a small workspace filled with the steady, rhythmic click-clack of sewing machines. To help them navigate the unfamiliar business landscape of their new home, they enlisted their 38-year-old son-in-law, Chow Tran. Chow was charismatic, articulate, and spoke the best English in the family, making him the natural face of the company. He handled the contracts, spoke with the suppliers, and managed the day-to-day interactions with clients. For nearly a decade, their hard work yielded magnificent results. Their dedication to quality earned them a lucrative contract with global giants, including prestigious brands like Disney. It seemed as though their American dream had fully blossomed. However, the tides of fortune are notoriously fickle. By the year 2011, the lucrative contracts began to slip away. The steady stream of orders dwindled to a trickle, and the once bustling sewing shop fell silent. The family found themselves facing severe financial strain, watching their life savings evaporate. In Vietnamese culture, when hard work and dedication failed to ward off misfortune, many turned to the ancient traditions of spiritualism and mysticism. For thousands of years, people have believed in the power of spiritual advisors to lift curses, appease the gods of wealth, and restore harmony to a troubled home. Desperate to save the business and protect his family from ruin, Chow Tran, encouraged by his mother-in-law, began searching for a spiritual solution. In the pages of a local Vietnamese newspaper, they discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor based in Houston, some 250 miles away. Her name was Daphne Wright. She claimed to possess the extraordinary ability to remove bad luck, lift generational curses, and invite immense prosperity. To a family standing on the brink of financial ruin, she seemed like a beacon of hope. Chow made the long drive to Houston to consult with Daphne. In her quiet home, surrounded by the fragrant smoke of incense and the soft chime of ritual bells, Daphne performed a ceremony designed to turn their fortunes around. The family felt a profound sense of relief, believing that their dark days were finally behind them. Yet, as the months passed, the business did not recover. Instead of stepping away, the family became deeply ensnared in Daphne's rituals. She began to offer her services on credit, and the debt quickly ballooned. Before they knew it, they owed her an astronomical sum, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. A shadow in the morning. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, the peaceful atmosphere of Arlington was shattered. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a frantic call from Chow Tran. His voice trembled with anxiety as he requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. He explained to the dispatcher that his father-in-law, Long Nguyen, who was 70-something years old, and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, were not answering their door. Chow, along with his wife and teenage son, had gone to the apartment, only to find the windows open and an eerie silence hanging over the home. An experienced officer, Officer Weller, was quickly dispatched to the apartment complex. When he arrived, he noticed the entire family standing outside on the pavement, their faces pale with worry. It was far too early in the morning for a typical welfare check, and the sheer number of family members gathered outside immediately signaled that something was. Deeply amiss, Officer Weller approached the front door and knocked, calling out into the quiet apartment. Receiving no response, he carefully stepped inside. The interior of the apartment was in complete disarray. Drawers were pulled out, compact discs were scattered across the floor, and furniture was overturned, presenting all the classic hallmarks of burglary. Officer Weller searched the living room, the kitchen, and the bathroom, finding no one. Finally, he approached the bedroom. At first glance, the room appeared empty. He turned to leave, but as his flashlight swept across the wall, he stopped. Next to a small closet door, there were faint hand smudges on the drywall. A sudden, instinctual hesitation gripped him. Every seasoned instinct told him that opening that door would change everything, yet his duty compelled him forward. He reached out, turned the handle, and pulled the closet door open. Inside, the small closet lay Long and Hong. They had been bound with a massive amount of duct tape, their heads and mouths completely wrapped. It was immediately clear that they had passed away. Officer Weller, despite his 14 years of experience, was left momentarily speechless by the gravity of the scene. He stepped back into the living room, took a deep breath, and called for backup, requesting homicide investigators and the crime scene unit. When the veteran homicide detectives, including Detective Stewart, arrived, they were deeply shaken by the severity of the crime. Detective Stewart, a veteran with 21 years in the homicide division, noted that this was one of the most tragic scenes he had ever encountered. The physical evidence suggested a struggle had begun right at the front entrance. with traces of a physical altercation marking the carpet, the couch, and the walls. At first, the scene looked like a robbery gone wrong. To reinforce this theory, the perpetrators had left behind highly specific items: a plate of crushed prescription pills on the coffee table, a marijuana cigarette, and a light blue bandana wrapped tightly around a beer bottle. To the investigators, the blue bandana looked almost like a gang signature. Arlington had several active youth gangs at the time, and the color of the bandana pointed directly toward them. Yet, to an experienced detective, the scene felt almost too perfect, as if it had been deliberately staged to lead the police down a false path. The search for answers. The autopsy conducted at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed a devastating truth. While the victims had suffered blunt force trauma to their heads, likely from a heavy object like a hammer or a bat, that was not the cause of their passing. Instead, they had suffocated due to the extreme amount of duct tape wrapped around their faces. The examiner noted that Hong's face had been bound with 25 feet of tape, while Long's face had been wrapped in 10 feet of tape. The sheer malice required to commit such an act pointed to something far more personal than a random robbery. As the detectives began interviewing the family, Chow Tran acted as the primary spokesperson due to his strong command of English. He told Detective Stewart that the entire family had been celebrating Long's birthday the previous evening. They had played cards and enjoyed each other's company until 10 o'clock at night, after which another family member had driven the elderly couple home. Chow claimed that his in-laws did not keep much money in the house and had no known enemies in the community. They were simply sweet, hard-working grandparents who kept to themselves. The investigation took a sudden turn when Detective Stewart received a phone call from insurance company. The representative informed him that the deceased couple held a substantial life insurance policy worth $1 million. When the detective inquired about the beneficiaries, he was surprised to learn that Chow Tran himself was named on the policy. Detectives immediately brought Chow in for further questioning. Chow explained that the insurance policy was established to ensure that the commercial sewing business could survive and continue supporting the family if anything were to happen to the elders. He cooperated fully, providing a seamless timeline of his whereabouts on the night of the tragedy. Every family member present at the birthday party backed up his alibi, leaving the police with no legal grounds to suspect him. The forensics team processed the staged items from the apartment, extracting a clear DNA profile from the discarded marijuana cigarette. They compared the DNA against Chow, the other family members, and the national database known as the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS. To their profound disappointment, the results returned no matches, because the database only contains the profiles of convicted felons. The investigators hypothesized that the suspect might be a juvenile or someone who had never been arrested before. With no fresh leads, no fingerprint matches, and dozens of interviews yielding no new suspects, the momentum of the investigation began to slow. The months stretched into years, and the case eventually grew cold. For over 2 years, the file sat on a shelf, waiting for a single piece of the puzzle to fall into place. The lost thread found. The breakthrough came in the autumn of 2015, over 3 years after the tragedy. In a seemingly unrelated incident in Houston, a young man was arrested for a felony offense: stealing a horse. In the state of Texas, livestock theft is treated with great severity, and the arrest required the young man, named Willie Guillory, to submit his DNA to the state database. When Willie's DNA profile was uploaded into CODIS, the system instantly flagged a perfect match. His genetic profile matched the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette left at the crime scene in Arlington back in 2012. At the time of the offense, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not been in the system during the initial investigation. On October 17, 2015, Arlington police officers apprehended Willie on a parole violation in the interrogation room. When confronted with the undeniable scientific evidence placing him inside the apartment, the young man broke down. He wept openly and confessed to his involvement, but he insisted that he was not the mastermind. He had merely been a follower. Willie revealed that in June of 2012, his 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory, had convinced him to take a road trip from Houston to Arlington. Bobby had obtained a key to the apartment and instructed Willie to help him stage a robbery. Together, they had scattered items, left the blue bandana, the beer bottle, and the crushed pills to make it look like local gang members were responsible. Willie admitted that he had smoked a marijuana cigarette and left it behind, entirely unaware that he was leaving the key to his own undoing. When Long and Hong returned home that evening, the situation turned violent. Willie claimed that Bobby attacked the couple to subdue them, and then instructed Willie to help carry them into the bedroom closet. It was there that Bobby bound them with duct tape. When asked why they would target a harmless elderly couple, Willie delivered a stunning revelation. He explained that the entire crime was a murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by a woman named Daphne. Wright, a spiritual advisor in Houston who was close friends with his uncle Bobby. Willie recalled overhearing Daphne telling Bobby that the couple owed her a massive amount of money and that she wanted them gone if they failed to pay. The mastermind unveiled. Armed with this critical confession, detectives arrested Bobby Guillory on December 16, 2015. Bobby, who had no prior criminal record, initially remained silent, but when presented with the evidence in his nephew's statement, he chose to confess. He explained that he had been in a desperate financial situation in 2011, having lost his job and facing homelessness. Daphne had exploited his financial vulnerability, offering him $10,000 to carry out the deed. Bobby painted a vivid picture of Daphne Wright as a commanding, manipulative figure who operated like a spiritual loan shark. She had convinced Chow Tran and Hong Lu that their business failures were the result of a powerful curse that only she could lift, as they fell deeper into debt trying to pay for her rituals. Daphne learned of the substantial life insurance policies. She realized that the only way to recoup her money was to ensure the policy was paid out, which required the passing of the policyholders. According to Bobby, Daphne had provided him with the key to the apartment. When the detectives asked Bobby where Daphne had gotten the key, his answer shook them to the core. She had gotten it directly from Chow Tran. Detectives immediately moved to arrest Daphne right at her home in Houston. During a thorough search of her residence, investigators discovered a detailed ledger. The book contained meticulous records of her clients, detailing charges of $10,000, $20,000, and even $40,000 for various spiritual services, including the placement and removal of curses. It was a highly lucrative operation built entirely on the fear and desperation of vulnerable families. To build an airtight case against Daphne, the prosecution made a strategic decision. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, truthful testimony. Chow agreed to cooperate, explaining to the court that his family had been utterly terrified of Daphne's supposed spiritual powers, believing that she could ruin their lives with a curse if they did not pay their debts. Chow claimed that his mother-in-law had even suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay Daphne off, a claim that detectives viewed with great skepticism, but which highlighted the intense psychological control Daphne held over the family. In August of 2019, the trial of Daphne Wright began. Chow took the stand, testifying in detail about Daphne's greed, her threats, and how he had left the apartment key under a doormat for her associates to find, despite the defense's attempts to portray Chow as the sole conspirator who wanted the insurance payout for himself. The jury was thoroughly convinced of Daphne's central role as a mastermind. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of capital murder. Daphne Wright was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring she would never again prey on the fears of others. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the tragedy. though the detectives felt a lingering sadness that Chow Tran did not face legal consequences due to his immunity agreement. They found comfort in the knowledge that the truth had been brought fully into the light. The memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu was honored through the pursuit of justice, leaving the community with a powerful reminder that honesty, compassion, and truth will always triumph over greed and darkness. The sun always seemed to rise with a particular kind of promise over Arlington, Texas. In the early years of the new millennium, the city was hummed by a quiet, industrious energy. Among the thousands who had come to build a life in this vibrant corner of Tarrant County were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They had arrived in the year 2000, carrying with them little more than their treasured family traditions, a deep respect for their heritage, and an unwavering belief in the American dream. For Long and Hong, the journey from Vietnam had been a long, winding road. Like many who had arrived in previous generations, especially during the first great wave after the historic events of 1975, they found comfort and familiarity in the close-knit local Vietnamese community. Arlington had become a sanctuary where the old world and the new world met. Here, supermarkets smelled of fresh star anise and lemongrass, while the streets outside echoed with the familiar hum of American commerce. Determined to create a lasting legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren, Long and Hong established a commercial sewing business. It was a modest operation at first, filled with the steady, rhythmic click-clack of sewing machines and the colorful cascades of cotton, silk, and polyester. To help manage the growing enterprise, they enlisted their son-in-law, Chow Tran, a 38-year-old who spoke fluent English and possessed a natural knack for business communication. Chow quickly became the public face of the company, negotiating contracts, welcoming clients, and handling the daily operational details. For nearly a decade, their hard work yielded beautiful results. The family business flourished, culminating in a highly prestigious contract to manufacture garments for a global entertainment giant, none other than Disney itself. In those golden years, the family felt an immense sense of pride. They had woven their own success, thread by thread, proving that dedication and unity could conquer any obstacle. Chapter 2, The Shadow of the Curse. But fortune, as the old proverbs often warn, can be as fleeting as the morning mist. By the year 2011, the winds of luck had shifted. The lucrative contract with Disney was lost, and almost overnight, the steady hum of the sewing machines began to falter. Bills started piling up, and the once vibrant workshop grew worryingly quiet. In moments of deep financial stress, people often reach back to the oldest roots of their culture for comfort and answers. For generations, traditional beliefs held that a sudden run of bad luck was not merely a matter of bad economics, but a spiritual misalignment. Long and Hong, like many of their peers, believed in the presence of protective spirits and the delicate balance of cosmic energy. When a family faced bankruptcy, divorce, or severe hardship, it was customary to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor, someone capable of performing ancient rituals to banish negativity and welcome prosperity back into the home. Anxious to save the family legacy, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law began searching through the local Vietnamese language newspapers. Amidst the classified ads, one particular listing caught their eye. A spiritual advisor based in Houston, some 250 miles away, advertised her unique ability to lift powerful curses and restore good fortune. Her name was Daphne Wright. Hopeful and desperate for a turning point, Chow made the long drive down to Houston to consult with Daphne. At her home, she performed an elaborate ritual designed to cleanse the family's business of its perceived spiritual obstacles. Chow returned to Arlington filled with a renewed sense of optimism. He assured the family that their luck was bound to change, and that the dark clouds hanging over their business would soon part. Yet as the months rolled by, the financial distress only deepened. Instead of finding relief, The family found themselves trapped in a different kind of web, one woven from mounting debts, whispered promises, and an escalating spiritual dependency that would ultimately pave the way for a devastating tragedy. Chapter 3. A Morning in June. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, the peace of a quiet Arlington neighborhood was shattered. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, an emergency dispatcher received a frantic call from Chow Tran. He was requesting a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long and Hong. Chow explained to the operator that his son and wife had gone to the apartment to check on the couple, only to find the residence quiet and a window suspiciously open. Fearing the worst, the family gathered outside, too terrified to step across the threshold themselves. An experienced patrol officer, Officer Weller, was quickly dispatched to the scene. Even for a seasoned veteran with 14 years of service, the atmosphere outside the apartment felt unusually tense. Welfare checks rarely occurred so early in the day, and the sight of an entire family waiting anxiously on the pavement suggested that this was no ordinary misunderstanding. Upon entering the apartment, Officer Weller immediately noticed signs of a disturbance. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered across the floor and furniture moved out of place, pointing toward a possible burglary. Officer Weller called out, his voice echoing through the quiet rooms, but there was no reply. The kitchen and bathroom were empty. With a growing sense of unease, the officer approached the master bedroom. At first glance, the room appeared empty, but as Weller turned to leave, his flashlight caught a series of dark hand smudges on the wall adjacent to a small closet. Taking a deep breath, he opened the closet door. Inside, hidden away in the darkness, lay the tragic remains of Long and Hong. They had been bound tightly with duct tape, their faces covered, and their lives cruelly cut short. The sheer brutality of the scene left the responding officers in absolute shock. It was a tragedy that defied comprehension. Why would anyone commit such an unspeakable act against a peaceful, elderly couple who had spent their lives working hard and helping others? Chapter 4. The Stage Puzzle. The Arlington Police Department's Homicide Unit, led by investigators with over 20 years of experience, immediately took control of the crime scene. At first, the evidence seemed to point directly toward a violent robbery committed by a local street gang. A light blue bandana, a common symbol among certain active youth gangs in the area, was found wrapped neatly around a beer bottle. Nearby, a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette lay on the coffee table, almost as if the intruders had paused to celebrate their crime. However, seasoned detectives quickly grew skeptical. In their experience, real gang burglaries were rarely so neatly decorated with symbolic items. The crime scene felt too deliberate, almost as if it had been meticulously staged to tell a specific story. Sometimes, a perfect crime scene is a sign that someone is trying too hard to point us in the wrong direction, one investigator noted. The sheer amount of duct tape used on the victims suggested a deeply personal motive, rather than a random burglary gone wrong. As the forensic teams collected hair fibers, DNA swabs, and fingerprint samples from the tape and the discarded cigarette, the investigation turned toward the family's inner circle. Detective Stewart began by interviewing Chow Tran, who acted as the primary spokesperson for the grieving family. Chow explained that the night before the tragedy, the entire family had gathered to celebrate Long's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed a wonderful evening, staying until 10:30 before receiving a ride back to their apartment. When asked about potential enemies or financial assets kept at home, Chow maintained that his in-laws had no known enemies and possessed very little wealth. He painted a picture of a sweet, generous couple who were beloved by their neighbors and deeply dedicated to their community. Yet, a routine inquiry with the family's insurance company soon revealed a startling detail: a life insurance policy worth at least $1 million, with Chow Tran listed among the primary beneficiaries. Chapter 5. The Long Cold Road. Despite the discovery of a substantial insurance policy, detectives lacked the concrete evidence needed to make an arrest. Chow and the rest of the family provided consistent, cooperative statements, and their alibis the night of the murders were thoroughly verified. When the DNA results from the crime scene finally returned from the laboratory, they brought a wave of disappointment. The genetic profiles extracted from the marijuana cigarette and other items did not match Chow, any other family members, or any existing entries in the federal DNA database known as CODIS. Investigators theorized that the perpetrator might have been a minor at the time, meaning their profile would not yet be registered in the adult system. For more than 2 long years, the case remained at a complete standstill. The files were carefully stored, the leads went cold, and the family attempted to rebuild their shattered lives in the shadow of an unresolved grief. The community whispered, wondering if justice would ever find its way to Arlington. But justice, though sometimes slow, possesses a quiet persistence. In the autumn of 2015, a seemingly unrelated event hundreds of miles away in Houston set off a chain reaction that would finally blow the case wide open. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony involving the theft of a horse. Because he had reached adulthood and was convicted of felony, his DNA profile was officially entered into the CODIS database. Within days, the system flagged a perfect match. Willie's DNA was an identical match to the genetic material left on the discarded marijuana, cigarette in sidelong, and Hong's apartment 3 years earlier. Chapter 6. Unraveling the Web. In October of 2015, detectives brought the 19-year-old Willie Guillory into the interrogation room. When confronted with the undeniable scientific evidence placing him at the scene of the crime when he was just 16, the young man broke down in tears. He confessed his involvement, but insisted he was merely a pawn in a much larger, darker game. Willie revealed that he had traveled to Arlington under the instruction of his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a 52-year-old man who was struggling desperately with unemployment and poverty. Bobby had been offered $10,000 to carry out the crime by none other than Daphne Wright, the Houston-based spiritual advisor whom Chow and Hong had contacted years prior. According to the confessions, Daphne had transformed from a spiritual guide into a relentless creditor. Over the years, she had run up an astronomical bill for her services, claiming that the family owed her between $250,000 and $280,000, knowing that the family could not pay. Daphne had allegedly focused her attention on their lucrative life insurance policies as the ultimate way to settle the debt. The revelation shook the investigators to their core. What had initially been investigated as a random act of street violence was, in truth, a highly coordinated, cold-blooded conspiracy born of greed and manipulation. Chapter 7. The Scales of Justice. On December 16, 2015, officers arrested Bobby Guillory at his home in Katy, Texas. Facing the overwhelming weight of his nephew's confession and his own financial desperation, Bobby admitted to his role in the tragedy, confirming that Daphne Wright was indeed the mastermind who had coordinated the entire plan. The investigation soon culminated in a dramatic trial in August of 2019. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, including Daphne's personal ledgers, which detailed the exorbitant fees she charged her clients for spiritual interventions. Chow Tran, having been granted immunity in exchange for his full cooperation, took the stand as the state's key witness. He described Daphne as an incredibly manipulative and controlling figure who held immense psychological sway over their family. While the defense argued that Chow was far more complicit in the scheme than he claimed, the jury ultimately focused on the primary instigator of the conspiracy. In September of 2019, Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also face severe legal consequences for their actions. Though the legal proceedings brought a sense of closure, The tragedy left a permanent scar on the community. It served as a somber, powerful reminder of the dangers of extreme greed, the vulnerability of those facing financial hardship, and the absolute necessity of looking out for one another. Ultimately, the memory of Long, Nguyen, and Hong Lu survived not through the tragedy of their passing, but through the enduring love of their children and grandchildren, who continue to honor their legacy of hard work, kindness, and cultural pride in their adopted home of Arlington. The morning sun over Arlington, Texas, usually brought with it a sense of quiet promise. In the early warmth of June, the tree-lined streets of the suburban neighborhoods began to stir with the gentle sounds of sprinklers, distant lawnmowers, and the soft chatter of families starting their day. Among the vibrant communities that had made this city their home, the Vietnamese immigrant community stood out as a testament to resilience, hope, and the enduring pursuit of the American dream. For Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu, that dream had been a long, winding journey that began across the ocean. Decades earlier, after the historic events of 1975 and the fall of Saigon, families like theirs had packed what few belongings they could carry, bearing an immeasurable wealth of hope, tradition, and determination. They settled in Arlington during the 80s and 90s, drawn by the warmth of the climate and the promising opportunities for business. It was a place where they could raise their children, cherish their cultural heritage, and build a lasting legacy. Long and Hong were the very definition of a gentle, hard-working couple. In their 70s, they had achieved what many only hoped for, a close-knit family, 3 loving children, and a commercial sewing business that they had built from the ground up. To support their endeavors, they had welcomed their son-in-law, Chow Tran, into the heart of the business. Chow, a 38-year-old who spoke fluent English, became the public face of their enterprise, managing contracts, speaking with clients, and navigating the complexities of the American corporate landscape. For nearly a decade, their efforts bore sweet fruit. They secured lucrative contracts with major commercial giants, including major entertainment brands like Disney. The sewing machines hummed with prosperous energy, and the family felt a deep sense of gratitude. They were prominent, highly respected, and deeply loved by neighbors who knew them as a sweet, generous couple who never bothered anyone. The gathering shadow. However, even the brightest paths can encounter unexpected turns. By the year 2011, the gentle winds of good fortune began to shift. The lucrative contract with Disney was lost, and the steady stream of business began to slow to a worrisome trickle. In times of hardship, the human heart often looks backward to ancient wisdom, searching for comfort and answers in the spiritual traditions of the homeland. For generations, their culture cherished beliefs in the luck deity and the wealth protection deity, symbols of hope that promise security and harmony if honored with a sincere heart. When major challenges arose, families would occasionally seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor, a bridge between the material world and the unseen forces of destiny. Hoping to lift the heavy cloud of bad luck that seemed to hover over their sewing shop, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong, began searching through the local Vietnamese newspapers. Far across the state, some 250 miles away in the bustling city of Houston, they found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright. She claimed a unique gift, the ability to dissolve negative influences, lift ancient curses, and welcome prosperity back into the lives of those who had lost their way. Urged by a deep desire to protect their family legacy, Chow reached out to Daphne. The journey to Houston was filled with a quiet hope. In her home, Daphne performed intricate rituals designed to turn their fortunes around. For a time, Chow and Hong felt a renewed sense of optimism, believing that their dedication would soon be rewarded and that the sewing machines would hum merrily once more. Yet, as the months stretched into 2012, the promised prosperity did not arrive. Instead, the financial burden grew heavier, and the relationship with their spiritual advisor took on a silent, demanding weight. An unforeseen call. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, at exactly 7:29 in the morning, the peaceful routine of the Arlington Emergency Dispatch Center was interrupted by a worried voice. Chow Tran was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. Chow explained to the operator that his teenage son had gone to knock on the door of the apartment, but there had been no response. The family had gathered outside the residence, their worry growing with every passing minute. They noticed that a window to the apartment was slightly open, and a troubling feeling began to settle over them. Too anxious to enter the home themselves, they waited on the sidewalk, praying for a simple misunderstanding. Officer Weller, a dedicated member of the Arlington Police Department with 14 years of experience, was the first to arrive on the scene. Seeing the entire family standing outside the apartment so early in the morning immediately signaled to him that this was no ordinary welfare check. Stepping to the front door, Officer Weller called out into the quiet apartment. There was no answer. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were completely still. Yet the home showed unmistakable signs of disarray, suggesting a burglary had taken place. Weller walked toward the bedroom, his focus entirely on finding the elderly couple and ensuring they were safe. As he turned to leave the bedroom, his flashlight caught hand smudges on the wall next to a small closet door. A sudden hesitation stopped him in his tracks. Following a quiet professional instinct, he reached out and opened the closet door. Inside, the tragic reality unfolded. The gentle elderly couple, Long and Hong, were found tied together. The scene was incredibly somber and quiet, marking a heartbreaking end to their beautiful journey. Officer Weller, deeply moved by the sight, stepped back into the living room and immediately radioed for a supervisor and the crime scene unit. The search for truth. When the Arlington homicide investigators arrived, led by veteran detectives with over 21 years of experience, they found themselves facing a profound mystery. The apartment showed signs of a violent struggle that had begun right at the front door. There were markings on the walls and furniture, and a curious assortment of items left behind on the coffee table. Among the scattered belongings was a plate of crushed prescription pills and a handmade cigarette, alongside a light blue bandana wrapped around a beer bottle. To the initial observer, these items looked like the calling cards of local youth gangs that occasionally operated in the area. However, Detective Stewart, a seasoned investigator with a sharp eye for detail, remained skeptical. The crime scene felt almost too deliberately arranged, as if someone had gone to great lengths to paint a picture of a robbery gone wrong. The subsequent autopsy at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed a deeply moving detail. The cause of passing was not the physical struggle itself, but suffocation.